Good afternoon, everyone. If I could ask you to take a seat so we can get started, I would appreciate it. We're going to start this afternoon with Bowie State University, and we have Kelly Norton as the budget analyst and Dr. Aminta Hawkins-Bro. If you want to come up to the table, you can, and then you can respond after the analyst.
Thank you. We're going to start on page 4 with Exhibit 1. It shows the total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2018 to 2023. Total undergraduate enrollment decreased by 90 students or 1.7% from fall 2022 to 2023. As is illustrated in the exhibit, first-time, full-time students experienced the largest decline, falling by 200 students, which was slightly offset. Thank you. Which was slightly offset by an increase in the continuing student population, which grew by 164. Total undergraduate enrollment in fall 2023 reached 5,288 students. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As shown in the exhibit, the number of applications grew greatly from 2015 through 2018 as a result of Bowie partnering with an enrollment firm that specializes in identifying students who will apply to universities. The drop in 2019 was the result of a change in methodology that counted only completed applications. Of note, beginning in 2019, the acceptance rate of applications has increased substantially, totaling 82% in 2023. Despite this increase, the yield rate has fallen to 18% in 2023. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 3 on page 6 provides the second and third year retention rates for first-time, full-time students. The second year retention rate has increased in both 2018 and 2019, reaching 75.3% for the 2019 cohort. The third year retention rate rebounded from the 2017 cohort low mark of 53.9% to 58.7% for the 2018 cohort. It was a decline in both retention rates for the 2020 cohort with the onset of the pandemic, followed by a slight increase for the 2021 cohort. Exhibit 4 on page 7 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time, full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 6-year graduation rate peaked with the 2012 cohort, which reached 47.6%, and has continuously dropped with the following cohorts, reaching 42.3% for the 2016 cohort. The 4-year graduation rate has steadily improved since 2008, reaching a rate of 17.9% for the 2015 cohort. However, this rate has been lowered since that time, with a 4-year graduation rate of 16.5% for the 2018 cohort. Exhibit 5 on page 8 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Non-Pell eligible students graduate at higher rates than Pell eligible students in all of the identified categories except part-time transfer students. Pell eligible full-time transfer students graduate at higher rates than both first-time full-time and part-time transfer Pell eligible students. Exhibit 6 on page 9 shows the estimated cost of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2020 through 2022. This exhibit shows that the average cost of attendance over these years was $24,389. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded averaged $14,166. This exhibit also shows the cost of attendance will vary depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2022, it cost a student $9,673 with a family income of under $30,000, but $22,061 for a student with a family income of over $110,000. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has increased from $6.3 million in fiscal 2017 to $7.6 million in fiscal 2022. Merit scholarships totaled $3.9 million in fiscal 2022, while need-based aid accounted for the most awards given. The U.S. Department of Education reports the median debt and earnings for graduates by field of study. Exhibit 8 on page 11 illustrates that the median debt of students ranged from $20,000 for human development family studies majors to over $27,000 for computer and information science and support service majors. As is also shown in the exhibit, nursing majors attained the highest median earnings, totaling over $79,000. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 9 on page 13 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2023 to 2024. According to Bowie, the fiscal 2024 working appropriation does not reflect final anticipated expenditures. The largest dollar change was in instruction, which increases by $9.5 million due to lower than anticipated fiscal 2023 spending due to vacant positions. Institutional support decreases by $2.4 million or 9.4%, but Bowie anticipates institutional support to increase by $2 million to cover marketing efforts and infrastructure enhancements. The proposed fiscal 2025 budget found in Exhibit 10 on page 15 includes $4.2 million in salary enhancements, $17.5 million in HBCU settlement funds, and a general fund decrease of $2.6 million when excluding the salary enhancements. Bowie's total state fund allocation increases by $3.3 million or 4% relative to the adjusted fiscal 2024 working appropriation. Exhibit 11 on page 16 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. The ratio for these levels remain roughly stable from fiscal 2018 through 2020. The impact of the pandemic, however, can be seen in fiscal 2021 with auxiliary revenue representing only 14% of unrestricted revenues. The fiscal 2025 allowance anticipates tuition and fee revenues of $54 million and total unrestricted revenues to reach $171.8 million. The personnel data for the university is found on page 17, which identifies that as of December 31st, 2023, the university had over 128 positions vacant above the expected turnover amount in fiscal 2023. DLS asked the president to comment on the progress being made to fill the vacant positions. In fiscal 2025, the number of contractual full-time equivalents increases by 19.65. DLS asked the president to provide a reason for the increase in contractual FTEs for fiscal 2025 after the decrease in fiscal 2024. An update on the status of the nursing program can be found on pages 19 through 20. The DLS operating budget recommended action is found on page 18. That is to see the University System of Maryland overview for system-wide recommendations. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Great job.
Yeah, thank you.
No questions from the committee. Dr. Bro?
Good morning, Chair King, and thank you to members of the committee for having me here today. I am Aminta Bro, the very proud 10th president at Bowie State University. I'm joined by Mr. Michael Atkins, the interim vice president for administration and finance at Bowie State University. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the operating budget for BSU. I'm so grateful for the support you and your colleagues in the General Assembly and the governor have shown for higher education and the University System of Maryland, of which Bowie State is a very proud member institution. I do understand the difficult choices that must be made to balance the budget, particularly this year. And even with the proposed 2.2% decrease in the University System of Maryland budget for fiscal year 25, it is so reassuring to know that your continued support is there for a high premium on ensuring access to higher education. Your support allows Bowie State University to fulfill its mission of providing an affordable, high-quality education by minimizing increases in our tuition. You have my written testimony, and so I will share just a few highlights and then address the two questions posed by the analysts. I'd like to thank Ms. Norton for her analysis and for visiting our campus last fall. We appreciate the time and effort she has dedicated to the full analysis and spending time with us at BSU. I am in my 7th year as president at Bowie State University, the oldest HBCU in the state of Maryland. And I'm happy to share that the demand for BSU education continues to be high. We receive on average 13,000 applications for 1,000 freshman slots. We continue to exceed MHEC's projections for degree production. And our first-time full-time degree-seeking student enrollment has increased by over 20% since 2019. There is great excitement on the campus as we celebrate many points of pride, including, according to the U.S. News and World Report, Bowie State University is now ranked number 16 among the more than 100 HBCUs in the country. And we are ranked number 8 among the approximately 50 public HBCUs in the country. BSU is recognized among the most innovative universities and as a top performer for social mobility by U.S. News Best Colleges just this year. And BSU is a top 5 Maryland university for graduating African Americans with bachelor's degrees in nursing, biology, computer and information sciences, according to Diverse Issues in Higher Education. And BSU is listed among the nation's top graduate school programs in nursing, Computer Science and Education and Public Affairs, again by U.S. News and World Report. We are proud of the efforts to garner more private giving and announce at the end of the last calendar year that BSU achieved our $50 million Campaign for Excellence fundraising goal 2.5 years ahead of schedule. While we celebrate and thank individuals and partners such as Adobe, Truist Bank, BGE, and so many others, we have raised the bar and set a new goal to raise an additional $25 million before the official close of our campaign in December 2025. Our faculty continue to excel in research, and in our quest for the Carnegie Classification R2 designation, awards have increased by $11 million or 245% since 2019, with nearly $20 million in grants annually. Last year, we graduated 16 doctoral students and invested $3.8 million in research. We are moving closer to the goal of 20 doctoral level students and the $5 million research investment required to reach the R2 designation. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were very pleased to welcome the U.S. Education Secretary, Miguel Cardona, who visited Bowie State to highlight the outstanding work going on with our faculty in the College of Education to produce more school counselors and more Black male educators for K through 12th grade. With funding we are receiving from the HBCU Coalition Case settlement, we have launched 16 new academic programs in high-demand workforce-aligned fields. Since 2021, such as software engineering, cyber operations engineering, data science, applied biotechnology, and molecular biology, as well as the Internet of Things and the Internet technologies. We are proud of the faculty efforts to provide academic programs to Jessup Correctional Institution and to be the first HBCU to provide a full degree program in sociology to incarcerated citizens. We're especially proud of our first PhD program in counselor education and supervision. And we are closing out our current 5-year strategic plan entitled Racing to Excellence and launching a new strategic plan that will begin July 1st. With your continued support, we will continue to focus on our mission to provide access to an affordable education, preparing students to meet the workforce demands in our region. Moving forward, our strategy for sustained growth will include adding more innovative academic programs, increasing marketing and promotion, developing more partnerships with community colleges, increasing transfers, and then moving forward to attain the Research 2 Carnegie designation. Increasing our capacity to house more students on campus is essential to our continued success. We will be breaking ground on a new P3 public-private partnership residential community facility that will add 600 more beds for more students to live on campus. Only about 1/3 of our 6,400 students currently live on campus, and many more, including those who are local, want to stay on campus and get the full student experience. And we want them to, because we know that students persist and graduate when they feel connected and engaged with the campus community. I will say more about this during our capital budget hearing, but I must point out that our future growth and competitiveness depend greatly upon the infrastructure on our campus. It's wonderful to be able to develop new academic programs, but the challenge that we face now is the lack of space, aging infrastructure, deferred maintenance. I hope we can take a closer look at this dilemma on the capital budget as we continue to spend the HBCU settlement dollars on the operating side over the next several years. We need to focus in on infrastructure, and we are doing our very best to provide more housing as quickly as possible. We are also focused on increasing our graduate enrollment, which increased by almost 25% from last year in a 1-year time period. And we have the capacity to grow the graduate programs more quickly, given especially since many of our graduate students do not require housing, and we have more funds to develop more programs. I hope you get a sense of the excitement that I feel. We are growing, we are thriving in Prince George's County as the only HBCU in the county, and the oldest HBCU in the state. I was first asked, let me now switch to the comment I was asked to address. I do want to address, first of all, the vacant positions. We are doing more to hire more than ever before, in part because we had to scale up to support the new academic programs and student services that are needed to support students toward success. It is clear that in today's market post-pandemic, we just couldn't continue doing things as we have in the past. We need new models to support the learners coming to us. So we revamped our human resources department, adding a talent acquisition unit and implementing new marketing and recruitment strategies to attract and retain the best talent to Bowie State University. We've also streamlined our processes. Our efforts are paying off. We've already reduced the vacancy rate by 5 percentage points as of February 1st of this year, and we expect to get that down to about 9% by June 30. I was asked why our contractual FTEs have increased for fiscal year 25. This increase is related to services we must provide, like instructional design and advising to support our students, as well as additional support staff and faculty to implement the new academic programs we have developed and are continuing to develop. In short, I have charged my team at Bowie State University with scaling up to meet the needs of our growing institution. And as we grow the new programs, we are reinvesting in the institution, and we forecast continued growth and success for our historic institution, the oldest HBCU in the state of Maryland. But we are scaling up, and we're doing it rapidly. And so we have increased our FTEs, but what we hope to do as we reinvest in the institution is to continue to find the right balance as we level off and have more staff on board. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. You know, we've had several conversations this week with various different groups about community colleges and our local colleges and universities about what are we doing differently to attract the population of kids, especially in the community colleges, but with all colleges, to get them there, to get them in the door and help them be successful, and just looking at how creative everybody's being. And I'm pretty impressed with it. I think we're on the right track anyway.
Thank you, Chair King. I really appreciate that. We are intentional in working with our community colleges. We're very pleased with the articulation agreements we have.
Mhm.
We have strong working relationships, and we look to strengthen those relationships, have more students who are prepared to come into the four-year institutions, but we have to have a seamless transition, making sure that we're working closely together, and we recognize that. And we're very pleased with the work that's happening across the state.
Okay, well, thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much.
Senator Benson, I'm betting you don't have any questions about it.
I have no question. No. We have, I'm sure you know that we have been very concerned about the status of the library. Where are we with the construction of the library?
Thank you for
Because
that.
I did have a conversation with the governor. All of us are very sensitive. I want to know where we are with the Thurgood Marshall Library.
Thank you for your question about the library. We have plans to build an academic commons and a new library. Our library is very much behind in terms of the support that's needed for our students as well as for our faculty to conduct the research that's underway. I want to thank the Senate and the House for the support that was given to Bowie State University to begin the design and planning phase for the library. What we need to have happen is to move the project up from fiscal year 27 to fiscal year 25 to expend the funds. So as that happens, then we are able to move forward on the planning process.
Did I hear you say 2007?
Fiscal year 27 is the designated time to begin planning. We have funds that you have allocated. 27, fiscal year 27.
Madam Chair, that's unacceptable, but we'll talk about it. No, we can't keep on moving the needle. I said to the governor last week, we would not have that kind of library at College Park. That's unacceptable at Bowie State University. It's very unacceptable. Madam Chair, if we visited the library, you would understand how it's unacceptable, Madam President. We're going to try to do something about that, because we need to move that. We need to move on that quickly, because that library is very outdated. I've talked with a group of Bowieites yesterday, and we all agree that it's very outdated. Madam President, we're going to try to take that on as something it's very personal for me, because we don't have that at other colleges. We don't have that at Towson. We don't have that at College Park. We shouldn't have it at Bowie State University. So we're going to, Madam Chair, we need to talk about that. We need to move that needle back. We need to do something about that. That's number one.
Thank you for your
Number two-
support, Senator.
Number two is, I see here on page number, the question is for you. Why do we have a decrease in the funding, in the settlement funds for historical Black colleges? It's about a $700,000 decrease. Why do we have that for 2025?
If I'm not mistaken, I can get the information to you, but if I'm not mistaken, it's based off the proportion of the enrollment. So based off of how much money there was available, the proportion of the enrollment determined how much money Bowie State received. And so that's why the number went down, but I'll get that to you after.
But guess what? The enrollment at Bowie State University is bursting at the seams. We have a number of students who come in from around the country, and they want to enroll there. And the enrollment is way up. You heard from the president, the enrollment is way up. So I can't seem to understand why we are losing $700,000 here. That's a tremendous decrease for Bowie State University. I think we need to take a look at that, because that we should not have a decrease in those settlement funds. See, that's how we get into trouble with our historical Black colleges. We continue to decrease funding, and that settlement is very, very important. And we want that money we want you all to take a second look at that. We want that money to be restored for the historical Black colleges and universities funding. That's a settlement fund.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator.
Good. I support Prince George's County.
We always support the senator from Prince George's County.
Thank you, Senator.
She's a force to deal with. I know. I can't imagine. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator. Thank you so very much. Thank you for your support. Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to do the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Sarah Baker is our analyst, and Senator Sanjay Rai is, or Senator Secretary Sanjay Rai is the agency representative. You want to come up to the table?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start with online enrollment on page 6, and Exhibit 1 shows the in and out state enrollments at Maryland institutions. And as you see, enrollment significantly increased in 2020, reflecting the impact of institutions teaching most courses remotely. Since then, enrollment has fallen over 44%, but total enrollment exceeds pre-pandemic levels. Turning to Exhibit 2 on page 7, shows the top 5 Maryland institutions with the highest online enrollments, and they account for over 70% enrollments in the state. And overall, only Global Campus saw an increase in its enrollments. Exhibit 3 on page 8 shows the number of students from Maryland enrolled in other institutions in other states, which peaked in 2020, which again was related to the pandemic and institutions turning to remote learning, and has since dropped. Turning to student loan Debt tax credit at the bottom of the page is a summary of the changes for the program in the 23 tax year, including doubling the amount of tax credit MHEC could improve to $18 million. And in addition, $9 million is reserved for state employees. Additionally, priority is given to those students who graduated from a Maryland institution where at least 40% of the students were Pell eligible. As shown on Exhibit 4 on page 10 for the 23 tax year, the number of applications declined almost 40%, which is mainly due to the timing of the end of the 3-year suspension on student loan payments. Exhibit 5 on page 11 shows that 86% of the applicants were eligible for the tax credits, of which 16% were eligible for the maximum credit of $5,000. Exhibit 6 on page 12 shows the outstanding loan balances of the recipients. And you'll see that over 20.5% of the recipients had balances exceeding $100,000. Turning to the budget on Exhibit 7 on page 17, spending shows the spending for 25. Funding for Salinger, when you include the contingent reduction, accounts for 52% of the spending. Education grants comprise 25% of the spending and administration 8%. As shown in Exhibit 8 on page 14, overall funds decreased $54.1 million in 25 when including the proposed deficiencies and the contingent reduction for Salinger, which decreases by $67 million. There's also a decrease of $11.3 million reflecting the transfer of Maryland 529 in the ABLE programs to the Treasurer's Office. There's $25 million to fund the Governor's initiative for the Higher Ed Security Enhancement Funding Initiative. I also note there are 2 one-time deficiencies. One is to modify MD caps and the other is to provide additional funding for the costs related to MHEC's move to East Redwood Street. Turning to Salinger formula on Exhibit 9 on page 16, shows funding of the formula since 2020. In 22, funding increased 50.5% due to the funding at the statutory percentage of 15.5%. This and increases in the budget for the selective public 4-year institutions resulted in a doubling of funding between 21 and 23. Funding in 25 decreases $3.2 million due to a change in the methodology used in calculating for Salinger, which is discussed towards the bottom of the page. Basically, the Department of Budget and Management broke from past practice using the self-reported enrollment projections prepared by the institutions and used MHEC's enrollment projections for calculating the funding per full-time equivalent students at the selective 4-year institutions. DLS notes there have been recurring issues with MHEC's methodology, which consistently missed enrollment declines and whose projections are overly optimistic compared to the institution's projections. Exhibit 10 on page 17 shows the impact by institutions, in which you see funding for Salinger is $7.5 million lower than expected. DS does note that the statute does not specify the source of the data for the full-time equivalent student and therefore recommends adopting a provision in the BRFA to require the use of the selective public 4-year institutions self-reported full-time equivalent student data that is based on credit hours for calculating the funding per FTES for Cade, Salinger, and Baltimore City Community College formulas. In addition, DLS is also recommending that University System of Maryland, Morgan, and St. Mary's convene a work group to develop a uniform methodology for calculating graduate full-time equivalent students to be used when calculating their total full-time equivalent student enrollment. Turning to Exhibit 11 on page 18, it compares the full-time equivalent student enrollment at the MICUA institutions based on the current law on BRFA. A provision in the BRFA changes the data used to calculate the allocation of Salinger funds from the total FTES enrollment to only using the graduate full-time equivalent student enrollment, which results in a reduction of over 21,000 full-time equivalent students. As shown on Exhibit 12 on page 19, this leads to a $63.8 million reduction in funding for Salinger when compared to current law. And due to having higher graduate student populations, Johns Hopkins experienced their largest decline of $53.8 million, and decreases at the other institutions range from around 13,000 to 1.7 million. Exhibit 13 on page 20 shows the out-year impact of funding under the current law on BRFA, and overall between 25 and 29, the total reduction in funding is estimated to be $341.2 million. Turning to educational grants on page 21, as shown in Exhibit 4, funding for grants increased $12.4 million, which is mainly due to the 25 million for the governor's security enhancement initiatives, which will provide grants to universities to enhance campus securities. And we asked the secretary to brief the committee on plans for allocating those funds. There's also an increase of 33,000 as mandated for the inmate training and job pilot program. Turning to personnel on page 22, the allowance includes 11 new positions. Five are for the Office of Student Financial Aid Assistant, and 1 is for a deputy secretary. Turning to the first issue on page 23 on improving program approval process, you may recall that language was added to the budget bill last year, restricting funds until a report is submitted from a legislative work group. With recommendations to improve MHEC's program approval process. The work group approved 23 recommendations in the areas that are listed on the page, and there's more detailed description of these recommendations in Appendix 2. I would note that SB 1029 and HB 1244 as introduced would incorporate these recommendations into statute. There has been some concern about the 10 additional positions provided for the program evaluation unit established under Chapter 41 of 21 and is discussed on page 24. And these positions were created and filled before the release of the final report from the National Center of Higher Education Management System, which not only include recommendations to improve the program approval process, but how best to utilize the new positions. And there are also questions if the new positions were best aligned with their increased responsibilities. In addition, there's further concerns with the recommendations of the work group if MHEC has the appropriate staff to meet the increased requirements. So we asked the secretary to comment on if the current program review unit staff will be able to support the requirements and increase responsibilities proposed under SB 1020 and HB 1224. The last issue on page 24 is related to the new financial aid system, in which 8 million from the dedicated purpose account was allocated in the fiscal 23 budget to support the development of a new system. According to the Department of Information Technology, and is shown in the major information technology appendix of the governor's budget book, in 23, a little over 300,000 was spent on the project. However, no funds have been transferred from the dedicated purpose account. The governor's budget books also show 6.8 million in special funds from the dedicated purpose account being appropriated in 25, but these funds are not included in MHEC's budget. So we asked the secretary to comment on why the dedicated purpose account funds were not used in 23 and on the expected development costs and on the use of DPA funds to cover the expenses. And also the secretary should comment on when the fiscal 25 funding is expected to be appropriated. The recommendations are start on page 25. The first is a restriction of funds pending a report on the status of correction action related to the most recent fiscal compliance audit. The next two are annual requests for reports on institutional aid, Pell Grants, and loan data by EFC data and progress towards the 55% completion goal. On page 26 is a BRFA recommendation specifying the sources of the FTES data used in the funding formulas. And that concludes my presentation.
Nice job. Senator Benson. Put your mic, there you go.
Does Maryland Higher Education, does this commission fund Baltimore City Community College
That's funded through a formula.
through a formula?
Yes, there's a.
So who determines the formula that is used to finance of that college?
It's in statute.
I'm sorry?
It's in statute. The formula is in statute of how to calculate their funding.
Okay, so how can that, well, I'll talk to you all, because we need to find out how that can be changed. How can that be changed? How can that formula be changed? We have to look, how do we do that, Madam Chair?
Well, you have to change it with legislation, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah,
We have to put legislation in.
correct. So it's probably a bill for next year.
It is an issue. Yeah, I visited the community college, and I have some grave concerns.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Rai, welcome.
Good morning and thank you, Chair King and members of the Education, Business and Administration Subcommittee for the opportunity to offer comments on the governor's proposed budget for the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Senator, I also want to thank you for the brief promotion that you offered me earlier today. I live in Senator Brian Feldman's district, and he may have some concerns. And he should not be concerned. I have no intentions of
You're
running.
smarter than that.
I also want to thank Ms. Sarah Baker and legislative staff for the thorough analysis. We are pleased that FY 2025 budget provides continued funding for arduous work ahead of the Maryland Higher Education Commission. As you know, there are several challenges facing higher education, not only in Maryland, but across our great nation. Changes in higher education are imminent, and we must ensure that Maryland institutions are highly successful in emerging scenarios. We are rebuilding the agency and confidence among our stakeholders. Our agency is committed to addressing the numerous problems that far too long have hampered student success, institutional growth, and the creation of a cohesive workforce. This cohesion is the basis of Maryland's social and economic fabric. There are several paradigm shifts across higher education, from understanding the value of a degree or certificate to upskilling or reskilling individuals for emerging fields to redefining college readiness. To be the state government's partner that leads in these paradigm shifts, the state government partner that you all expect MHEC to be, I must focus on rebuilding the agency and the confidence among our stakeholders. Since my appointment, I have affirmed my commitment to rebuilding and strengthening MHEC's mission and guiding the agency's actions. We look forward to continuing the work we have initiated at MHEC with the stakeholders from all segments, nonprofits focused on student success, and businesses, and building a robust workforce through post-secondary education. MHEC is singularly focused on leveraging higher education as a powerful tool to propel people forward and leave no one behind. Our agency has the important and rewarding task of coordinating 16 outstanding community colleges, 14 public four-year institutions, 22 private institutions, and 140 private career schools. We also have 15 out-of-state institutions operating in Maryland and 11 post-secondary institutions operating with a religious exemption. Maryland is home to 8 regional higher education centers, bringing educational programs to Maryland's residents across the state. Moreover, there are 186 entities that provide post-secondary educational and training opportunities to our nation's veterans via the GI Bill. These entities that MHEC coordinates and regulates serve close to 500,000 students each year. You have our written responses. However, I would like to speak directly to a few key points that were identified in our analysis, and I would like to highlight some new initiatives. First, on space, we are currently housed in a building owned by the Maryland State Department of Education across 3 different floors. Renovations are scheduled for the Nancy Grasmick building next year. After the renovation, MSD plans to reclaim the space in the buildings for its growing number of employees. MHEC will have to eventually move as a result. MHEC is planning to move to new office space, which has been identified at 217 East Redwood Street in Baltimore City, a few blocks from the current offices in the Grasmick building. This space is currently sitting vacant after DJS moved. We expect to assume the release to this space. All MHEC staff will be on one floor, increasing workforce efficiency and cross-agency communication. On staffing, we are grateful for the additional pins and resources allocated to the MHEC budget. I would like to share a stark statistics, although I personally don't favor comparing statistics between 2 different states. But just in this case, Texas has 30 financial aid programs with 90 employees. Maryland has 27 financial aid programs with 18 employees. The investments made through MHEC's budget will translate into real workforce and economic growth for the state of Maryland as we seek to close the gaps that exist with respect to college access, educational equity, and workforce development. MHEC is focused on educational achievement, workforce development, and business creation. Several financial aid scholarships and grants have been created over the years that have to be administered, tracked, and reported. Yet the agency has not realized any staff increases to manage and coordinate the new financial aid incentives. MHEC cannot continue to operate at the existing staffing levels. New financial programs have been created over the time, and people are working harder at the agency with fewer resources, leading to revolving vacancies. MHEC must fulfill the agency's mission and maintain a stable professional staff with institutional knowledge. The additional pins will help the agency to meet its statutory duties and better serve the residents of Maryland. Post-2025 goals, Maryland exceeds nationwide trends in college completion, including a robust drive for education ladders and training at multiple entry level. Yet, equity gaps among racial and ethnic groups indicate that not all students are completing at the same rate. MHEC is focusing on new post-2025 goals that will enable Maryland to serve our students and increase Maryland's national profile. Based on educational equity, meaningful credentials, production versus population goals, industry-specific goals, and research and innovation goals. We are aligning our higher education goals with the current state needs to expand educational equity and economic competitiveness. These opportunities are often one step in a much larger career pathway and are viable opportunities for individuals to make a living wage. MHEC is ready to improve Maryland's economic edge with a world-class economy, attracting top-tier talent and expanding startup business creation through education and economic competitiveness. MHEC is singularly focused on leveraging higher education as a powerful tool to propel people forward and leave no one behind. There is a paradigm shift happening at MHEC. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the committee? Okay, now we have a little issue going here this afternoon because I have a bill that I have to give in Tripoli myself. And so Senator Benson, if you would come here and listen, have the witnesses do it, I'll run across the street, the hall and give my bill and I'll be right back. Okay, will you come up here? Okay. Sorry for that. This is the list of witnesses right here.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Senator, do we have any questions, Senator?
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have several witnesses who would like to contribute to this bill. I'm sorry, to this report. The first is Nat Powers, the Maryland State Independent College and University Association.
Madam Chair, would it be okay if I had my presidents come up and
Sure.
sit with me? Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, member of the subcommittee, for the record, Matt Power, President of MICUA. As many of you know, the General Assembly saw the importance of linking funding for nonprofits to publics over 50 years ago. The thinking then, which is truer today than ever, was that to create the workforce Maryland needs and the opportunities for Maryland residents that they desire, no single segment of higher education could possibly do it alone. The underlying philosophy has been that it was a savings to Maryland taxpayers because every degree generated in the public system cost taxpayers an order of magnitude more than if it were granted from a nonprofit institution. The dual system of education worked so successfully that 20 years later, the General Assembly created the core CADE formula to create a true ecosystem of higher education with linked funding. Even with this collaborative funding model, the state of Maryland fails to meet its modest 55% degree production goal. And now we're working to increase that goal. At the same time, we're cutting funding for Selinger and CADE. If current funding levels aren't sufficient to help us meet the 55% state goal, why bother with a new goal that the state isn't willing to financially support? MICUA recognizes the fiscal realities facing the state of Maryland, and we also recognize that the state and your predecessors in this body have faced greater challenges over the last half century than the state faces in the FY25 budget. We ask that you proceed cautiously, that you be measured, principled, and respectful of a system that has a proven track record of success. We're happy to help you tackle the FY25 budget problem, but does a nearly 50% cut distributed in a completely scattershot fashion to institutions that have stood by the state of Maryland, helping create the workforce we need make sense? The proposed cut to the Selinger program truly feels like a genuine insult to the partnership we've committed to with the state for 50 years. Does the state of Maryland want to see closures of nonprofit institutions in the state? We want to work with this subcommittee and the General Assembly to both honor our traditions and uphold our joint commitment to a program that has a tremendous return on investment. We ask that you accept our proposal. Run the formula in the fair and equitable way in which it was originally designed. To achieve the savings you need to help you balance the budget, we agree to language in the BRFA that limits any single institution from receiving more than 35% of the Selinger allocation. Our proposal still reduces the Selinger program by nearly 20%. If every other entity that testifies at this table in defense of their budget was willing to voluntarily reduce their funding by 20%, you'd have a pretty easy lift this year. Please work with us. I hope you'll listen closely to our presidents describe the impact of the Selinger program on their campuses, their local economies, and Maryland students across the state. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And if I may, might I turn it over to President Hirschman?
Thank you, Matt. And good afternoon, Senator Benson, Senator Bailey. Very appreciative of being here. I'm Elliot Hirschman, president of Stevenson University. You may remember Stevenson as Village Uli College, and I'm often asked by folks, how did Stevenson go from being a small college that enrolled hundreds of students to a university that now enrolls 3,700 students? And one of the factors that I always cite is the Selinger program. Selinger only represents 4% of higher education funding in Maryland, a very small proportion. The MICUA institutions produce 27% of the undergraduate, the baccalaureate graduates in the state, and an astonishing 47% of the graduate students, master's and doctoral. So think about that, a 4% investment, return of 27% for the undergraduate degrees and 47% for the graduate. Selinger also helps MICUA institutions address the significant outmigration that is now affecting all of Maryland. As you well know, Maryland loses 2 students to other states for every single student we recruit into Maryland. Every state, all 50 states, are now focused on recruiting workforce talent, workforce competitiveness, and 45 states, 45 of the 50, now support independent higher education in their state to enhance workforce competitiveness. Of those states, 14 provide higher levels of funding to independent higher education than Maryland does. With the proposed cut, we will move into the lowest tier in terms of providing support for independent higher education. Included in the nearby states that provide more funding Pennsylvania, just north of us, New York, Virginia, and North Carolina. And they are the top 4 recruiters of our Maryland students who go out of state, often not to return. With the support of Sellinger, our MICUA members play a critical role in bringing that talent to Maryland. We're smaller on any measure you look at than the other sectors of higher education, but we bring more students to Maryland than any of the other higher education sectors, which also do a great job. We recognize, as President Power indicated, that the committee faces very tough decisions and that we're going to have to take reductions. That's part of how we look at this year. But we also believe that the MICUA proposal presents a fair approach that will allow us to continue to support Maryland and our workforce competitiveness. So thank you. We appreciate your consideration of our proposal.
Good afternoon, Senator Benson, Senator Bailey, and members of the committee. I'm Mary Lou Yam, president of Notre Dame of Maryland University in Baltimore, and I'm in my 10th year in the presidency. Notre Dame was founded in 1895 as the first Catholic college for women in the United States to award the bachelor's degree, so a proud heritage. Today, Notre Dame is a comprehensive, coeducational university of just under 2,000 students, with a mission to educate leaders to transform the world and a commitment to provide access to higher education for students. Notre Dame serves an incredibly diverse population of students. 89% of our students are Maryland residents. 51% are individuals of minority ethnic backgrounds. 24% of our students are first generation, and 50% are Pell Grant eligible and rely on a combination of federal, state, and institutional financial aid to support their educational pursuits. Notre Dame is ranked number 18 as a top performer of social mobility by the U.S. News, and that ranking puts us number 1 in the state of Maryland for schools that are in the North Regional category. As a part of our unique curriculum, our students are actively engaged in service in our local community via our signature York Road Education and Service Program. Notre Dame has a long history of partnering with the state to meet its workforce needs. We are a leader in the state in teacher preparation, with Notre Dame School of Education routinely recognized as one of the largest private providers and top 5 overall providers of new teacher certifications in the state. As a sector, MICUA institutions produce half of the education degrees in the state at or above the baccalaureate level, and we know how much we need teachers in the state. We are also a leader in healthcare preparation programs, including nursing, occupational therapy. We are only the 2nd program in occupational therapy in the state, a master's in physician assistant, and also the first bachelor's and master's of art therapy in the state of Maryland. We're proud of the work we've accomplished. In our nursing program, we've graduated over the past 10 years, 1,800 graduates with nursing degrees. Notre Dame and the other MICUA institutions of higher education support the bold and ambitious agenda outlined in the state's blueprint for Maryland's future. However, we are concerned that a critical component of that plan, the preparation of diverse and highly qualified new teachers, and also the continued professional development of current teachers, will detrimentally impact the significant reductions proposed to the Sellinger program in the governor's budget. The proposed recalculation of the Sellinger formula in the BRFA results in a 46% reduction to Notre Dame's funding. This is the 3rd highest percent reduction of any MICUA institution. I can't begin to tell you how devastating this reduction would be to our campus. For a university like Notre Dame, with a limited endowment to fall back on, such a significant reduction would almost certainly result in a reduction to need-based financial aid for our students, nearly 89% who are Maryland residents, job losses, and/or a combination thereof. Not only are these cuts devastating, but they simply couldn't come at a worse time for our students. As this committee is aware, the federal government has been working to simplify the FAFSA form. For the upcoming 24 class, the impact has been absolutely devastating, with FAFSA completion rates down nearly 45% annually in Maryland, nationally, and 39% in Maryland year over year. Many institutions, including Notre Dame, are at a real risk if students decide to walk away from higher education this year. With all the uncertainty in federal and state financial aid, institutions need to be able to provide students with some level of confidence and certainty that their institutional financial aid will remain stable. We respectfully request the committee to consider the MICUA proposal to allow for a fair and equitable distribution of the Selinger formula so that we continue our great work of helping Maryland students, especially those most need, to contribute to our workforce and the talent pool in the state. Thank you very much again for your consideration.
Good afternoon, Senator Benson, Senator Bailey. I'm Tim Trainer, president of Mount St. Mary's University in Emmitsburg. I've been the president since 2016 and can personally testify to the impact the Selinger program has had on our campus. Prior to arriving at the Mount, I served 33 years in the Army and saw how young people's lives were positively transformed by the opportunities afforded them in the military. Today, young people from Maryland are afforded opportunities at the Mount due in part to the Selinger program. We are the largest private employer in Northern Frederick County, providing 781 jobs, and we invest in the area. We partnered with Frederick Health to bring an urgent care center to our campus that is open to the public, and we're opening a new School of Health Professions later this year in the town of Emmitsburg. Since 2016, our student body has grown by 14% and diversified considerably. Our undergraduate population is 45% students of color and 32% of our students are Pell eligible. Expanded access to Mount education would not have been possible without the Selinger program. MICUA institutions do a better job of graduating low-income and first-generation students than most schools in Maryland. The state offers its residents the opportunity to pursue low-cost, low-debt higher education at an institution that is the right fit for them. Students graduate at higher rates than our peers because large campuses and large lecture halls are not right for all students. We also graduate our students quickly, which means they start earning faster and stop accumulating debt. MICUA members have the highest 4-year and 6-year graduation rates compared to our state and national competitors across all demographics. We would not be able to accomplish this for your constituents without the Selinger program. We understand the pressures you're under and are trying to find a shared middle ground. I strongly encourage you to embrace the MICUA proposal and allow us to continue our good work on behalf of Marylanders. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Brad Sims. I'm the president of Capital Technology University. We're in Laurel, Maryland. We're located between the NSA and NASA, where many of our students work. And we are a minority majority university in Maryland. We're also the smallest MICUA member. And the proposed Selinger cuts will cut over 50%. So let me describe a little bit about the impact to our students that at the undergraduate level that we'll have. Our focus at Capital Tech is to create a direct pipeline between our institution and the workforce and provide students with great careers that they can take care of themselves and their families for a lifetime. As a matter of fact, we're so confident in our undergraduate degrees that meet the state of Maryland workforce needs that we offer all of our undergraduate on campus students 2 guarantees. One is that when you graduate, if you don't make at least $52,000 a year, we cover your quarterly loan payments for you and your parents until you exceed that. And the second is if you don't have a job in 90 days in your career area, you can come back to campus for free 36 credits of a certificate in another area. Now, we can offer those guarantees because we have such a high placement rate for all of our undergraduate students. And our undergraduate student mix is 36% Pell eligible and 80% Maryland students. So you can see we're supporting the Maryland workforce with all the technical areas that we offer. As an idea of our return on investment for our students, Capital Tech was ranked number 213 out of 4,500 colleges and schools across the United States in a Georgetown University report a few years ago. It was called the first try at return on investment, ranking all 4,500 colleges and universities across the US. That was over a 20-year net present value. If you looked over 40-year net present value, we were ranked 120 out of 4,500 colleges and universities. And last year, we were ranked in Forbes top 500 as one of the top 500 ROI universities in the United States. Our graduates earn money, and that's true of other MICUA members as well. According to the college scorecard, MICUA schools graduates far outperform United States four-year publics and privates in median earnings after graduation. What makes this even more impressive for both Capital Technology University and my fellow MICUA members is that we're doing it with students of modest means. As the DLS Higher Education Overview pointed out, Capital Tech is a second-ranked institution in the state of Maryland for economic mobility. The Economic Mobility Index accounts for the price to earnings premium, which measures the average time it takes for students from families earning $30,000 or less to recoup their cost of obtaining a credit in combination with the proportion of students from low to moderate income households. 6 of the top 10 schools in the highest 3 tiers of the Economic Mobility Index are MICUA institutions. We know how to help low-income students succeed, attain degrees, and climb the economic ladder. We are here to demonstrate to you the incredible value that we offer your constituents as prospective students, as well as an incredible return on the investment that we offer the taxpayers in Maryland. Please endorse the MICUA proposal so that Capital Technology University can continue to change the economic fortunes of Marylanders. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator Benson, Senator Bailey. My name is Maria Tilden, and I'm the Vice President for Government Affairs, Government, Community, and Economic Partnerships at the Johns Hopkins University in Madison. I first want to thank this body for supporting Salinger for more than 50 years. The rationale to fund independent institutions of higher education that existed in 1972 is still true today. It's imperative that the state preserve and strengthen the dual system of higher education. Every student in Maryland, regardless of background, should have the opportunity to pursue a degree in an institution of their choosing without incurring substantial debt. As the largest private employer in Baltimore City and in the state of Maryland, Johns Hopkins accounts for more than $3 billion in total research and spending in Maryland, $331 million in licensing revenue over the past 10 years, and 163 plus startups based on Hopkins technology that account for over 1,500 jobs across the state of Maryland. I would love to repeat that. $3 billion in total research spending in Maryland, $331 million in licensing revenue over the past 10 years, and 163 startups based on Hopkins technology that account for 1,500 jobs across the state of Maryland. Our impact on employment and new business formation is no doubt dramatic and eclipses by a significant measure any other institution in the state. Salinger dollars are crucial to our ability to keep Maryland talent in state through competitive aid packages. In 2023, 90% of the Salinger funding Hopkins received was used to provide financial aid for Maryland students. The remaining 10% allocated to programs that would directly support their academic endeavors. As my fellow panelists noted, Maryland is a net exporter of students, and Hopkins works hard to recruit and retain Maryland students and provide access to underrepresented groups. In fact, in 2020, 38% of Hopkins undergraduate Salinger students are first generation or Pell Grant eligible. Further, as the largest private employer in Baltimore City and the state, Hopkins' impact on employment and new business formation is significant and it eclipses any other institution. In closing, slashing the funding will hurt Maryland students and Maryland's economy, precisely when Hopkins is doing more than ever to support the city of Baltimore and the state in its investment in research and education. Therefore, we respectfully ask that you reject the proposed cuts to Salinger and adopt MICUA's proposal, which, despite the fact that it is a dramatic cut to Hopkins, provides full funding to the balance of the MICUA institutions. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Has everyone spoken that needs to speak? I think so. This is something that we are really wrestling with, and I think you've heard my speech that I've been fighting for Salinger and CADE funding, I think, since I came to the legislature. And it's something that we're really wrestling with right now because we just have so many dollars to spread around, and we have not made our final decisions yet at all about how it's all going to work out. But just believe me that we're trying really hard to put as much back in as we can. We'll just see how it all shakes out in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Bailey.
I just wanted to say, to echo the chairman's remarks on that we really appreciate each and every one of you coming here and making your case. We hear you loud and clear. We're going to do what we can.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Benson.
Yes, and I really want to say thank you all for the work that you do. I really want you to know that we really appreciate what you all are doing to raise the bar for the great state of Maryland. I mean, I'm listening to your testimony this afternoon, and it really is heartwarming for me as an educator to hear your commitment to the great state of Maryland and to future generations. And I think that you need to be commended. But also as an educator, I know how difficult the task is. But I wanted to tell what the chairwoman has said. We're operating on a very tight budget this year. And so we're going to do the best that we can to take a hard look at what you all have said to us this afternoon. So thank you once again for the great job that you do.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming down and being patient with us.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the Maryland State Department of Education, Early Childhood Development. I think I passed Carrie Wright in the conference room or the committee room upstairs. I don't know if she's going to get in here with us or not. Okay. Natalie Andrade. Andrade. I like that better. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the fiscal 25 allowance for the Division of Early Childhood Development under the Maryland State Department of Education. On the first page of this analysis, you can see that the fiscal 25 decreases, fiscal 25 budget decreases by $5 million to $709.3 million. On page 4, there is an analysis of 3 performance measures. The first one is the kindergarten readiness assessment. The main insight here is that the These these results have improved slightly following the pandemic decline. And as you can see in Exhibit 1 on page 5, in the 22-23 school year, 41.6% of assessed kindergarteners demonstrated readiness for kindergarten, reflecting 2.1 percentage point raise from the preceding school year. Although this outcome is a slight improvement, it remains below the pre-pandemic level reported in the 19-20 school year, when 46.7% of kindergarteners demonstrated readiness. By subgroup, you can see that the direct certified children experienced the largest improvement in the KRA results in the 22-23 school year, with a 6.4 percentage point increase from the previous school year. In contrast, children with disabilities and English learners have demonstrated minimal improvement compared to the previous school year. The 23 Blueprint Comprehensive Implementation Plan requested that MSDE submit a report to the AIB by December 1st, 2023, evaluating KRA for any racial, cultural, or linguistic bias and for any potential bias in its administration. As of February 13, 2024, AIB reported that MSDE had not submitted the KRA report, and MSDE should provide an update on KRA evaluation activities requested by AIB and the timeline for submitting the requested report. The second performance measure is related to the childcare capacity. The main insight here is that despite the slowing decline, childcare capacity remains stagnant post-pandemic. And as you can see in Exhibit 2 on page 7, following the closure of 10,500 licensed childcare slots during the COVID-19 pandemic, the rate of decline in childcare capacity is gradually approaching pre-pandemic levels. According to MSDE, the decline in capacity is primarily attributed to the closure of family childcare programs. And despite efforts to stabilize and support the childcare sector, the overall capacity has not shown significant improvement and has not returned to pre-pandemic levels. So MSDE should comment on the specific factors contributing to the continued decrease in childcare capacity. The third measure is related to the childcare scholarship program, customer service, and application processing. MSDE has acknowledged delays and challenges for childcare providers and families participating in the program, specifically related to the application processing times and the delivery of invoices and scholarships. Committee narrative in the 23 Joint Chairman's report requested that MSDE include goals, objectives, and performance measures in its annual managing for results submission. In their submission at DLS, we have noted that these performance measures tend to focus on processing initial presumptive eligibility application and payments rather than the full application process to determine long-term eligibility or renewal. So MSDE should discuss the availability of customer service and application processing measures for the period after presumptive eligibility ends. On page 8, there is a discussion about the proposed deficiency. The fiscal 25 budget includes one proposed deficiency totaling $217.9 million in general funds to support prior year shortfalls and anticipated current year shortfalls in the childcare scholarship program. Exhibit 3 on page 9 shows the breakdown of the fiscal 25 allowance. As you can see, more than half of the budget, 58%, goes to the childcare scholarship, 22% goes to the publicly funded pre-kindergarten, and 6% is allocated to the wraparound and supported services, commonly known as duty and party centers. Exhibit 4 on pages 10 and 11 shows the proposed budget changes to the budget. And as you can see, the primary contributing factors to this change include a reduction of $83.8 million in supplemental childcare development block grant funds, authorizing the ARPA to support the childcare scholarship program. And also there's a decrease of $11.2 million to support the pre-kindergarten capacity building grant. This decrease is partially offset by increases in various initiatives, including the state fund support for the childcare scholarship. This increases by $52.1 million. and an increase of $33 million for the pre-kindergarten formula funding. I'm going to turn to page 13 of this analysis where it begins the issues section. We have 4 issues to present to the committees, and the first one is related to the childcare scholarship program. The fiscal 25 allowance includes cost-saving measures under the childcare scholarship program following significant fiscal 23 and fiscal 24 shortfalls. Exhibit 5 on page 14 shows the childcare scholarship program enrollment, and as you can see, this enrollment has experienced a notable increase from 15,200 children served in January 2021 to 13,800 children served in October 23. That means an increase of 102%. This rapid doubling of enrollment occurred over approximately 2 years following the gradual decline during the COVID-19 pandemic. And starting from January 22, the year-over-year change, the line in black, in enrollment generally increased each month. Specifically, the child care enrollment from October 22 to October 23 has consistently exceeded the pre-pandemic height of 20,900 children enrolled in October 19, reaching a peak of 31,300 children enrolled in September 23. This sharp increase in enrollment coincided with significant policy changes that encourage more children, families, and providers to participate. And also the cost of the program has increased. And one contributing factor for the increased cost in the childcare scholarship program is related to the replacement of the Childcare Administration Tracking System, CCAT. MSDE introduced advanced enrollment-based payments in January 23 and the fast-track application process in July 23, which added to the program administrative expenses. These changes, along with customer service improvements, led to MSDE updating the CCATs, particularly the development and implementation of family and provider portals, automated data entry for childcare scholarship application, and the establishment of the fast-track portal. So MSDE should comment on the timing of implementing these administrative and information technology changes and their associated costs. Now I'm going to turn to page 17, where you can see Exhibit 6 shows the total fund spending on childcare scholarship payment. And here you can see that these payments increases significantly by $252.2 million from fiscal 22 through fiscal 25. From fiscal 19 to fiscal 23, federal funds consistently cover a substantial portion of the expenses. These are represented by the bars in green, ranging from 57% to 71%. Due to the ongoing cost of programmatic changes, enrollment growth, and the end of one-time ARPA support, childcare scholarship program expenses outpaced available federal fund sources beginning in fiscal 23. MSD closed fiscal 23 with a deficit and anticipates a continued shortfall in fiscal 24. As a result, the fiscal 25 allowance, as I mentioned before, includes a proposed deficiency totaling $217.9 million in general funds, with $42.9 million covering the fiscal 23 shortfall and $175 million supporting the fiscal 24 spending. Exhibit 7 on page 18 shows the estimates for the childcare scholarship expenditures, enrollment, and the average cost per child for fiscal 23 through fiscal 25, prepared by the Regional Economic Studies Institute, RESI. RESI prepared low, middle, and high scenarios for cost, and the exhibit shows only the middle scenario compared to the actual expending in fiscal 23 and budgeted funding in fiscal 24 and 25. The estimates are based on current policy and do not include estimated savings from any cost containment measures. It should be noted that the December 23 forecast display lower fiscal 23 forecasted spending than actual expenditures. MSDE indicated that these forecasts only included services provided during fiscal 23 and exclude the July 23 advance payments issued in June 2023. The discrepancy observed in the estimates for fiscal 23 raises questions regarding the accuracy of RESI's estimates for the following fiscal years. So MSDE should comment on a plan and timeline to competitively bid the program forecasting services in the future. As you can see in Exhibit 7, in fiscal 24, RESI projects the total program expenditures to be $395.7 million. And the fiscal 24 working appropriation of $403.7 million appears to have sufficient funding to cover this cost after accounting for the fiscal 24 share of the proposed deficiency. And for fiscal 25, the total expenditures are anticipated to be $433.2 million. When comparing the fiscal 25 allowance of $412.4 million to the forecasted expenditures in fiscal 25, you can see that there is a deficit of $20.8 million. On page 19 begins a discussion about the cost containment measures. The increased expenditures in the program and the related shortfalls have led to concerns related to the affordability and sustainability of the program for the state. To limit program costs, MSDE notified the appropriate committee's chairs on January 9, 2024 of plans to increase family copays for new families enrolling in the program and those renewing their eligibility redetermination beginning July 1, 2024. And as you can see in Exhibit H, page 20, the potential copay scale could align with income brackets relative to the state median income. Families with incomes falling within the 35% or below the state median income and could have their copayments waived entirely. Families between 36% and 54% of the state median income could contribute a copayment equivalent to 3% of their gross income, while those at 55% or above could contribute 7% of their gross income. MSDE indicates that the current scholarship recipients could not pay a copay until their eligibility is redetermined at the expiration of their scholarship term. On page 21, there's a discussion about the authorization to freeze the childcare scholarship program enrollment. A proposed action in the BERFA of 2024 could remove the restriction of enrollment freezes and provide MSDE with the authority to introduce an enrollment freeze. MSDE indicated that it does not have plans to initiate a waitlist in the fiscal 2025 and didn't provide any detail for spending or enrollment growth levels that could trigger an enrollment freeze and the income categories that could be impacted. So the savings from the copayments should help to eliminate the gap between the allowance and the RESI forecast of fiscal 25 expenses. And MSDE indicates that the fiscal 25 allowance does not incorporate potential savings from the possibility of an enrollment freeze. So it is concerning that there is a lack of clarity on when the enrollment freeze could be triggered or how it could be implemented. Given the significance of copay increases and potential enrollment freezes in managing the childcare scholarship program cost and resolving the potential $20 million deficit in fiscal 25, MSDE should provide detailed savings estimates for increasing copays and implementing an enrollment freeze. The second issue on page 22 is related to the early childhood programs under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. The fiscal 25 allowance includes $220.9 million in total funds for Blueprint mandates supporting early childhood programs. All early childhood programs expanded or funded through Chapter 36 meet the mandated funding levels in the fiscal 25 allowance. However, the Maryland Child Care Credential Program does not receive funds in fiscal 25, as Chapter 36 only required 10% increases in program funding each year through fiscal 24. As it does not impose a minimum funding requirement for fiscal 25. So MSDE should comment on the impact of this on the implementation of the program. Exhibit 10 on page 24 shows that the fiscal 25 pre-kindergarten formula funding increases by $33 million compared to the fiscal 24 working appropriation. And exhibit 11 on page 25 shows the funding levels and enrollment for publicly funded full-day pre-kindergarten slots beginning in fiscal 18. From fiscal 18 to 2022, MSD funded full-day services by awarding pre-kindergarten supplemental grants to local school systems based on the number of the 4-year-old students they enroll in public programs. Chapter 36 established a phase-in timeline beginning in fiscal 23 in which MSDE and local school systems fund 3-year-old and 4-year-old children with family incomes at or below 300% the federal poverty level. These are defined as the Tier 1 children in both public and private programs through the full-day pre-kindergarten formula. As you can see in the exhibit, the fiscal 24 working appropriation and fiscal 25 allowance include 99.6 million and 132.6 million for the pre-kindergarten formula respectively. And these funds will support 27,000 children in fiscal 24 and 3,700 children in fiscal 25. Chapter 119 of 2023 changed the definition of Tier 1 children within the publicly funded full-day pre-kindergarten program. So MSDE should clarify whether it incorporated the updated definition of Tier 1 children as outlined in Chapter 119 into calculation of the full-day pre-kindergarten formula funding in fiscal 24 or 25. The third issue is related to the proposed pre-kindergarten sliding scale. And as part of the full-day pre-kindergarten formula established in Chapter 36, MSDE is required to implement a sliding scale to subsidize pre-kindergarten services for families earning more than 300% of the federal poverty level, but not exceeding the 600%. These are known as the Tier 2 students by the start of the 24 and 25 school year. Regarding the pre-kindergarten tier distribution, the enrollment count taken on September 30, 2022 of 3,700 children in the 22-23 school year marked the first instance of collecting household income data from families of pre-kindergarten students for the purposes of determining income tiers under the full-day formula. Among these enrollees, only 62% had reported household income data. For the Tier 2 families, only 1,700 students were identified. So on page 27, Exhibit 12 shows a financial analysis of the sliding scale options for these 1,700 students. And after this financial analysis, MSDE show four sliding scale options, and option 4 emerged as the least expensive for families, requiring a total family contribution of $7.3 million. So MSDE recommended the implementation of a sliding scale option 4. And as you can see on Exhibit 13 on page 28, it shows the details of the sliding scale framework used in option 4, and families are capped at a maximum contribution of 7% of their annual income. At DLS, we have noted some considerations that should be taken into account as the sliding scale methodology is developed and finalized. The first one is that the absence of income tier data for 38% of pre-kindergarten students enrolled as of September 30, 2022, raises concerns about potential underrepresentation of the actual total cost of services. And the second is the assumption of a family of 4 and use of fiscal 22 federal poverty level in the calculations, which influences the accuracy of the projected cost of pre-kindergarten services. The estimation should also consider cost of living differences across counties. So MSD should comment on the absence of income tier data for 38% of pre-kindergarten students, plans to improve the collection of household income data from families of pre-kindergarten students, whether the fiscal 25 allowance calculates the full-day pre-kindergarten formula funding level based on the sliding scale option 4, and the process and timeline for approval and implementation of the sliding scale methodology. Issue 4, present the Childcare Stabilization Grant Awards. And as you can see on Exhibit 14 on page 30, shows the stabilization grant allocation spanning September 21 to September 23. During this period, 203 million was designated for childcare centers and 126 million for family childcare providers. The funding distribution includes 295 million for federal grants across 3 rounds and 34 million from state grant payments in the 3rd round, resulting in a total of 329 million in grant payments. And this financial support reached a total of 22,800 childcare providers. At the end of fiscal 23, 16.2 million in general funds budgeted in fiscal 22 for childcare stabilization grants were reverted in error. So MSD should clarify whether it still intends to make the plan awards, and if so, what funds will support the awards. Regarding the grant expenditure by use, you can see that in Exhibit 15 on page 31, MSD reported that based on the first round of the ARPA childcare stabilization grant applications, 54% of childcare providers indicating their intention to use the funds for personal costs. 19% of providers expressed their intention to allocate the funds for rent, mortgage, and taxes, and the remaining 27% plan to direct the funds toward utilities, maintenance, insurance, services, and equipment. MSD should provide the actual expenditure of a stabilization grant across all rounds. Finally, regarding stabilization grants across jurisdiction, Exhibit 16 on page 32 shows the distribution of stabilization grants across a jurisdiction. Providers in Montgomery County received the largest portion of the funds at $66 million, followed by providers in Baltimore County with $47 million. In contrast, providers from Garrett, Kent, and Somerset counties have received less than $1 million, and this pattern is primarily attributed to the limited number of childcare and family childcare providers in those counties. And to conclude, on pages 34 and 35, at DLS, we have outlined 2 recommended actions for the committees to take, which is to request MSDE to submit a report on plans for a childcare scholarship waiting list and the childcare scholarship quarterly expenditure reports. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much. Okay. Who wants to go first? Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am Deanne Collins, Deputy State Superintendent for the Office of Teaching and Learning at MSDE. I want to recognize Dr. Carrie Wright. She is in the audience. She's our interim state superintendent.
We've seen her running back and forth here with, she's been around today.
With me today is Dr. Shana Cook, Assistant State Superintendent of Early Childhood Education, Mr. Krishna Talur, Deputy State Superintendent of Operations and Finance, and Donna Gunning, Assistant State Superintendent of the Office of Finance. I want to take a moment to also say thank you for your hard work and commitment to education. Before we respond to the analysis, I'd like to share a little bit about the ways the department, under Dr. Wright's leadership, is improving education for all children in the state. Maryland has one of the most generous childcare programs in the nation, which is one of the reasons for the significant increases in participation from both caregivers and providers. This is allowing nearly 20,000 families to work with other families in the program, getting training and schooling that they may not have otherwise received. Specifically, the program is serving more children every year, allowing close to 20,000 families to work in Maryland's labor force. In FY 2023 in particular, the Child Care Scholarship Program served 32,945 children, an over 37% increase from 24,007 children served in FY 22. And 21,206 families, which was a near 40% increase over the 15,164 families served the previous year. Maryland has gone from serving only families making less than about 42,000 for a family of four to serving families making up to about 90,000 for a family of four. It's also made in Maryland a tremendous stride by increasing provider reimbursement rates, going from the 9th percentile of market rate in 2018 to the 7th percentile, which is where we currently are. This in part has led to an 11% increase in providers participating in the program from FY22, with nearly half of all childcare providers in the state taking part in the program. Maryland completed the implementation of an online family and provider portal, which streamlines the enrollment process, making access to the necessary childcare quicker and more seamless. Moving on to the department's analysis, I'd like to thank Natalie Andrade for your thorough review of the department's early childhood budget. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Cook to review the department's response to the analysis.
All right.
And thank you, Dr. Cook, for being so flexible today, too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator King. For the managing for results section, the department was asked to provide an update on the kindergarten readiness assessment evaluation activities requested by the Accountability Implementation Board and the timeline for submitting the requested report. MSDE took extra time for a thorough analysis and discussion of the Maryland Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, or KRA, report. The objective is to identify and address biases and develop effective strategies for a valid and reliable assessment. Dr. Wright will address the report during the Maryland State Board of Education meeting on February 27th, 2024. And MSDE commits to sending the finalized report to AIB by the same date. Next, MSDE was asked to comment on the specific factors contributing to the continued decrease in childcare capacity. Capacity is defined by both the total number of children authorized on the program's license and the enrollment within programs. Overall, the number of family childcare homes has decreased following a national trend that existed prior to the pandemic. This is offset by an increased enrollment in existing programs participating in the Child Care Scholarship Program. This is a nice segue into the next item. The increase in enrollment is directly attributed to the effectiveness of initiatives like the Growing Opportunities for Family Child Care Program, Maryland Rebuilds grants, Child Care Stabilization grants, and other supports to improve child care providers' business practices. The Child Care Scholarship Program's comparison between actual child enrollment data and licensing capacity data has shown a substantial 44% increase statewide in enrollment capacity for children of low income and working families. Between January 2023 and January 2024, the Growing Opportunities for Family Child Care Program produced 88 new programs with another 36 in the pipeline. 62 programs registered with Maryland Excels and 3 reached a level 3. 58 new programs are set up to accept the Child Care Scholarship Program. Maryland Rebuilds produced the first in Maryland Department of Labor registered state family child care apprenticeship program. An early childhood registered apprenticeship program is well on its way to achieving the same status. So we have another one coming in the pipeline. Nearly 200 early childhood educators participated in workforce initiatives, gaining new credentials, degrees, and on-the-job learning opportunities. The Child Care Stabilization grants enabled the department to provide support to providers, preventing premature closure for many during the pandemic and after. Strengthening business practices training developed through the National Center on Early Childhood Quality Assurance, which is coming out of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, has been provided across the state. Between 2022 and 2023, 59 child care center modules were delivered and 107 family child care modules were delivered. Maryland Child Care Boost, coordinated by the Maryland Family Network, was implemented at 3 child care resource centers. The cumulative result of these training programs was a 79% improvement in business knowledge. Next, MSDE was asked to share potential metrics for the period after presumptive eligibility. The MSDE Child Care Scholarship Vendor customer service hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The MSDE extended hour customer service hours are Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., really making sure that customer service is accessible. Customers not submitting all documentation have 30 days to complete the Child Care Scholarship application process. The MSDE Child Care Scholarship vendor has 5 days to complete the application process. The vendor processed an average of 81.76% of initial applications and 86.7% of redetermination applications timely for August, September, October of 2023. MSDE was asked to comment on the timing of implementing administrative and information technology changes, their associated costs, and plans for future implementation. MSDE implemented advance payment in January 2023 and a fast track application process in July 2023, increasing program costs due to the Child Care Administrative Tracking System, or CCATS, enhancement. Improving the current system involves programming efforts with associated costs influenced by the complexity and expense of maintaining the CCATS legacy system. Current engagements include migrating and enhancing the CCATS system to a Salesforce cloud-based environment for licensing and child care scholarship processes. This migration is an opportunity to re-engineer the system, meeting evolving agency needs and enhancing customer service, leading to smoother payment processes for providers and staff. Expected to be implemented by November 2024, the project has a projected cost of $22 million with yearly expenditures post-implementation estimated at $14 million, aiming for stabilized and potentially reduced overall costs. The total maintenance costs support the policy and system changes. MSDE was asked to comment on a plan and timeline to competitively bid the Child Care Scholarship Program forecasting services in the future. The current contract ends in November 2024. MSDE is currently beginning the process of issuing a request for proposal, RFP. MSDE was asked to provide detailed savings estimates for increased copays and implementing an enrollment freeze. The department's response document contains tables illustrating savings based on implementing copays, as well as savings based on implementing an enrollment freeze. MSD was also asked to comment on the impact of the Maryland Child Care Credential Program. The program serves as an important career ladder, recognizing providers for exceeding state licensing and registration requirements, supporting skill and credential development. Funding in FY 2025 is crucial for continued support. As of August 2023, Maryland had 57,584 early care and education teachers. Currently, 18% or 10,408 of all early care and education teachers participated in the program, awarding bonuses amounting to more than $2.7 million in FY 23. Regarding the proposed pre-kindergarten sliding scale, MSD was asked to clarify whether the updated definition of Tier 1 children was incorporated in the calculation of pre-K formula funding in fiscal year 2024 or fiscal year 2025. The department included the updated definition of Tier 1 children in the FY 25 pre-kindergarten formula calculations. The updated definition includes children with disabilities and children whose home language is other than English, whose family income qualifies for Tier 2 to be funded as Tier 1 for fiscal year 2025. The updated definition did not apply in fiscal year 2024. Further, the department plans for enrollment collection in fall 2024 to include the following: multiple webinars, technical assistance sessions, and office hours for local education agencies and private providers, as well as families, to ensure all stakeholders have access to the pre-kindergarten registration and cost information. MSCE plans to collect household income data for both local education agencies and private provider pre-kindergarten students in fall 2024. Guidance for FY 2025 emphasizes the importance of collecting data for each child at the time of enrollment, regardless of disabilities or multilingual status. In FY 2025, if income data is not provided at enrollment, the child will be enrolled as a Tier 3 student, paying the full cost of pre-kindergarten. The department was asked to provide child care stabilization grant expenditures by use. In the fall of 2021 round, MSCE dispersed $158.9 million to 5,207 providers. This allocation was based on a combination of $15,000 base funding and $500 per slot, resulting in grants ranging from $15,500 to $233,000. In the winter 2022 round, MSCE distributed $109.5 million to 5,371 providers. This distribution was based on $10,000 base funding and $126 per infant and toddler slot, child care scholarship slot, and social vulnerability index slot, resulting in grants ranging from $10,000 to $247,510. In the spring 2022 round, MSCE allocated $26.8 million to 5,439 providers. Similarly, this distribution was based on $10,000 base funding and $126 per infant and toddler, child care scholarship, and social vulnerability index slot, with grants ranging from $10,000 to $247,510. During the fall 2023 round, MSCE distributed $33.7 million in governor stabilization funding to 5,190 providers. Thank you.
You covered a lot. Senator Benson, do you have any comments? No. I do have one question where I got lost. Back on page 21 of the analyst thing here, it talks about MSDE. This is on the authorization to freeze CCS program enrollment. And it says MSDE was unable to provide detail for spending or enrollment growth levels that would trigger an enrollment freeze and the income categories that would be impacted. Did you cover that?
Yes,
I missed it.
that is in a data table in what we provided to the committee. But we'll also say that we are monitoring this closely and we're monitoring the projections and really working through them closely with the Department of Budget and Management.
Okay. And then on page 22, said this is under well, it's still under the freezes. The report should include spending or enrollment triggers for implementing an enrollment freeze and strategies for effectively managing wait lists. So it's all covered under the same thing.
Correct.
Okay. Senator Bailey, do you have any questions? Senator Benson.
Yes. Just so you will know, I am an educator. I mean, I live it every day. The question I want to ask is, why is it that we are not doing more for the pre-kindergarten program? I'm talking now about the 3 and 4 year olds. Why aren't we doing more? It seems to me that in this document, funding has been taken away from the implementation of the pre-kindergarten, the program, the early childhood programs.
Do you think that
is that, am I misreading it here?
Yes.
Because I have to tell you all, and you all are educators, you all know that the start determines the ending.
Yeah.
And if we don't give those baby children whose brain is developed, 90% of their brain is developed between birth and 5. And if we don't capture those baby children during that time period,
That's okay. It's all right.
I have to tell you, the other 10% is developed as they go along. But if we don't put more emphasis on funding programs, the early childhood program, we also need to understand that the providers who are involved are well trained so that when those children get to kindergarten and first and second grade, because after second grade, if we haven't done a good job, you all know the deal. By the time they get to 5th grade, they begin to verbalize that they are going to not finish school. And by the time they get to 7th grade, it begins to be confirmed. So I want you all to talk to me about what you all are doing in the way of not only with the money, but I'm talking about the program as a whole.
Right. Senator Benson, your comments really touch, resonate and are impactful. And then on behalf of the Maryland State Board of Education and the State Department, I can say we're committed to investing in early childhood education starting at birth. Through pre-kindergarten entry and then to the early grades and years. We are getting ready to release new early learning standards in the February board meeting.
Very good.
And they are developmentally appropriate. They are aligned with the latest research, and we've benchmarked them against other states, and they are best in class. We are very excited to release this. And we are also having an event April 9th during the month of the young child. We're bringing providers from across the state and local education agencies, Judy centers, all the folks who impact the lives of our young children in Maryland and families together to really dig into these new early learning standards and really talk across different types of programs across the state about the importance of instruction and the importance of getting our children ready for pre-kindergarten, for kindergarten, and for the early grades and years. And so what you stated is so important, and we're committed to supporting our early childhood educators across all settings in achieving that goal for our children and families.
The other thing is, the other issue that I'm a little concerned about are the children that have mental health issues, those children that are developmentally disabled, but the autism, we're hearing, this committee has heard that there's almost a waiting list for children who are autistic. One final thing, and I'll be quiet because I could talk about education all day. We've got to do a better job on training our teachers, those people in the trenches. We've got to do a better job, particularly with these teachers or these educators that are in the early childhood stage, who works with our children and the class size. There are a lot of factors that we need to take a look at. I hope that you all are doing that.
Yes, absolutely. In terms of supporting children with disabilities, we do have therapeutic childcare programs across the state, and we also have invested in infant early childhood mental health consultation. This is an evidence-based practice, and what it does is it supports both the teacher, the educator in the classroom, the parent and family, and the child in helping to really support any issues with behavior as well as disabilities. And so those are important programs that I want to highlight to you that we're implementing, and we're very supportive of both of those evidence-based programs. In addition, we are committed to instruction, and not just instruction in public schools, but instruction in private provider settings, Head Start, family childcare, childcare centers. And one of the things that we've done under Dr. Wright's leadership and Dr. Collins' leadership is we are really looking at the training that we're offering to the early childhood community and really looking at aligning that with instruction and instructional practices, not just basic health and safety or the basic level of quality, but really thinking about that next level of really implementing practices that we know are developmentally appropriate and support children's learning in the classroom. So those are things that we're implementing now, and we're expanding the reach of those programs to educators across the field.
Wonderful.
Senator Bailey.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. If I could get you to turn to page 32, Exhibit 16. And of course, I represent two counties, right? St. Mary's and Calvert. Calvert is smaller than St. Mary's, more children in St. Mary's than in Calvert. So I just, I look at the total providers, the second column there, total providers that receive federal funded grants. And I look down at St. Mary's and it's second from the bottom, only one lower. Help me. Why is this?
One of the things that we're doing and we're getting ready to embark on is a statewide supply and demand study where we're really understanding from families from birth all the way through pre-K and school entry, what are families looking for in terms of the types of pre-K programs they may want, or the types of childcare programs that they want, and where do families want those programs located? So where's the demand for those programs, and how can we very strategically look at building the supply, and not only building the supply, but also raising the quality, because we know there could be a supply of childcare programs or early care and education programs in a particular community, but they could be low quality. And so this supply and demand study that we're launching statewide, and we'll be able to break it down by county, will really help us plan for the future and set clear targets and performance metrics on how to build the supply in specific communities across the state. So that's what we're doing right now to proactively work on that. In terms of building quality, we do have a quality rating and improvement system called Maryland Excels, and they are made up of a set of quality assurance specialists who target specific regions in the state. And we have some that are dedicated to the St. Mary's and Calvert. And those quality assurance specialists are supporting the quality of programs and are there to also help connect current programs with licensing specialists to expand or build supply.
So just real quick, just why do I have a 56 in St. Mary's?
We're going to know more once we do that supply and demand study, but we also, once we do the supply and demand study, we'll know better about how many children are in the community, how many children want or how many families want specific types of care. Those are different considerations that we need to look into.
Is there anybody here that can maybe help answer this?
Yeah, sure.
I think part of the reason might be that in St. Mary's County, only 56 of the providers accept the child care scholarship. So if you have 100 providers and only half are willing to accept the child care scholarship, that could be a reason why the fewer accepted the funding. The other piece for this funding is that it was not mandatory. If you had to be willing to reopen, and maybe a number of providers were not willing to reopen.
Okay, I understand that part. I think we were pretty interested in reopening, right? Because we've got Tucson Ware Station, childcare, and that type of thing was a big issue. So that was sort of why I was sort of concerned of why that number was so low compared to just right across the Patuxent River where I got 300, right, with less children, right, less families. So that's why I was like, what is the issue of why that number was, it fell off the chart so much. So thank you very much.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. You better get out while you can. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to come down today. And I'm sorry it was so confusing between bill hearings and all that kind of thing, but we got it done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here that wanted to testify this afternoon? There is. I don't have a list. Well, then we're not finished. Come on up. Okay. All right. The first person we have is Lisa Klingenmeyer from Maryland Rise. No, don't worry. We'll just, yeah. Okay, we have Lisa Klingenmeyer, Laura Wheeldryer, Ellie Cowan, Callie Schumitz, and Jamar Day. You can come up for him if you'd like. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lisa Klingenmeyer. I'm the Executive Director of Maryland Rise, which is an organization that works to promote economic opportunity for all. We're here today in strong support of the budget of early childhood development, and in particular, the Child Care Scholarship Program. We want to thank the administration and all the amazing work of the General Assembly to really expand that program. It's doing really great things for Marylanders. We're really excited about the opportunities that provides, and we know that this chamber in particular did a lot of work around that. We want to thank you. We're also at the same time extraordinarily alarmed by some of the cost-cutting measures that are proposed around the Child Care Scholarship Program, both a wait list that's in the BRFA and also the potential to institute co-pays on families. The Child Care Scholarship Program we very much view as an investment, not an expense. It's an investment in children, it's an investment in their working parents, and it's an investment in our economy. And while we know that there are economic challenges ahead, we do not believe the Child Care Scholarship Program is where the state should be looking to find savings. We do not want to curtail access to this program by wait lists. We've seen that in the past and they are extraordinarily harmful. And we also don't believe we should be levying co-pays on working families. That could be in the hundreds of dollars a month for families who are struggling to make ends meet. We do not encourage that as being a way to look at how to figure out how to make the budget work this legislative session. Again, we thank the state for all the work they've done on this program. We want to be a partner in the effort to make sure this program continues to serve working Marylanders, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, honorable members, good afternoon. My name is Laura Wheeldryer. I'm the Executive Director of Maryland Family Network, a statewide nonprofit children's advocacy organization, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. I'm going to pick up on some themes that Lisa just mentioned because we too want to emphasize the challenges we see ahead for Child Care Scholarship and the importance of stabilizing and protecting that investment, as Lisa mentioned. We think there's a lot of good news in this year's budget. There's lots to celebrate. It's an extraordinary amount of resources dedicated to young children and their families. But we cannot and should not ignore serious issues in the past as we set a course for the future. We also should not ignore the lessons we have just learned in the past few years about what families in Maryland need. Over the past 6 years, starting with legislation in 2018, we started taking those lessons seriously and started systematically fixing them. And this is actually your leadership at work that we see here. For example, not even a year ago, you and your colleagues enacted legislation requiring the administration and MSDE to notify you, the General Assembly, if and when they had intentions of imposing cost containment on the Child Care Scholarship Program. That bill has worked exactly as it was intended because on January 9th of this year, MSDE informed you that it is proposing to reimpose copays on the working families who rely on child care scholarship to subsidize the high cost of childcare so they can enter and remain in the workforce. Again, that is what the bill called for. It's working exactly as intended. And now this proposal to ask working families to shoulder higher childcare costs is in your hands. We're grateful for this transparency and especially for the opportunity to urge you to reject this proposal. We are also concerned about the focus this analysis puts on the prospect of an enrollment freeze and wait list. That prospect is heightened by a provision in the BRFA, which seeks to repeal the core of last year's bill and reassert unilateral authority to impose an enrollment freeze on childcare scholarship and reestablish a wait list. And this is deeply problematic. Enrollment freezes are profoundly destructive, not just to individual families, but to the childcare scholarship program as a whole. As the analysis notes, and some of you will remember, the last time MSD imposed an enrollment freeze was in 2011. The program remained closed to many otherwise eligible families until 2018, 7 long years later. And at the high water mark of that period, over 20,000 children languished on a waiting list. So I urge you to retain the General Assembly's direct oversight of this program and do everything in your power to prevent destructive enrollment freezes in the future or the reimposition of co-payments for working families. Thank you so much for your time, your attention, your leadership. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Good afternoon. Ellie Cowan on behalf of the Maryland State Child Care Association, who represents childcare providers. So I echo my colleagues urging to reject the wait list, the freeze, and the co-pays that have been suggested as cost-saving measures. And while we've been talking a lot about how the scholarship benefits the families, it also benefits the providers. They are the ones receiving the reimbursement. It helps them have their business models be successful. And we need to ensure that we can't lose any more providers because we're already at a loss. We're stagnant since the COVID-19 decimated the childcare industry. And, our childcare workers are the backbone of our entire economy. I'm here because my kid's in daycare right now. So to that point, I would also like to draw your attention to another part of the budget, and that is the fact that the childcare credentialing program and the childcare career professional development fund. I wanted to make sure I got that right. My cheat sheet. But in the current budget, there is no funding for that. And that is a professional development essential for childcare providers who are looking to attain the highest level of Maryland Excels, providing a career ladder with essential bonuses for the childcare workforce. So as we're considering the benefits for our families, our working families out there, we also need to be investing in the childcare providers. So we would ask that you take that into consideration as you're considering the budget. It's been a long one.
Thank you. Next.
Providers.
Yeah.
Are there scholarships for those child care providers to get the training to be kept up to date on the latest trends?
That
is
you want to?
Can I ask that question, Madam Chair? Oh, I've already asked.
I think you did.
Can I hear that question, Madam Chair? Yes, there are. And I think that's one of this professional development fund is something that would provide that. And then, I think there's several pieces of legislation this year that are looking into encouraging.
The scholarships available?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could always use more.
Thank you, Chair King and members of the subcommittee. My name is Callie Schumetz with the Maryland Center on Economic Policy. I'm also focusing on the Child Care Scholarship Program. I think we all intuitively know that childcare is deeply connected to our economy and that parents need reliable, high quality and affordable childcare to be able to go to work. With Maryland having some of the highest childcare costs in the country, the Child Care Scholarship Program is a really essential tool to both support working parents and also increase the hiring pool for Maryland businesses. That's why we strongly support the full funding of the program that's proposed in the governor's budget. We are concerned about these cost-cutting measures that have been proposed. Maryland has the lowest unemployment rate in the country right now, and that means it is hard for businesses to fill open positions with multiple job openings for every person actively looking for work in the state. And one of the reasons for that is since the start of the pandemic, Maryland has seen a greater decline in the number of women working or actively seeking work than the national average. And as you all probably saw in the comptroller's recent State of the Economy report, they found that rising childcare costs are one of the significant factors that are preventing women in Maryland from rejoining the traditional labor force. Creating new barriers to childcare access, such as implementing co-pays or waiting lists for the Child Care Scholarship Program, will only make these challenges worse. I also want to note that the investments that we have made in the recent years in expanding and strengthening the Child Care Scholarship Program have really paid off. The analysis by my colleagues at the Maryland Center on Economic Policy found that this improved access to care may have enabled up to 11,900 additional women to gain employment with resulting earnings up to $381 million, lifted as many as 8,800 Marylanders out of poverty, increased household spending by up to $127 million and generated up to $27 million in state and local tax revenue. So again, the money that we're putting into this program has a significant return on investment. In addition to that, just the increase in family incomes and reducing childhood poverty also yields long-term benefits in children's health, educational outcomes, and their earnings later in life. So we strongly urge the committee to maintain full funding of the Child Care Scholarship Program without waiting lists or unaffordable co-pays that could lead to fewer families accessing the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else here? Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair Kerr, Chair King, members of the Budget and Taxation Committee and Business Administration Subcommittee. I would like to extend an extra warm greeting to my Senator Katie Fry Hester as well. My name is Major General Sanford E. Holman, U.S. Army retired of Ellicott City, Maryland. I served this country in uniform for over 40 years. During Operation Noble Eagle, as a training brigade commander, I led over 300 trainers transforming U.S. citizens into soldiers for Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. During our Operation Iraqi Freedom, as a Foreign Army Advisor team leader, I led over 200 foreign and U.S. Army trainers and advisors while building an 8,000 personnel organization for the new Iraqi Army from scratch. During Operation Enduring Freedom, as Deputy Commander of the Combined Joint Task Force Horn of Africa, I led over 2,000 personnel that included 100 U.S. Army trainers and advisors while developing military personnel for countries in the Horn of Africa and served as the senior military advisor to the U.S. Ambassador to the African Union. Later, I served as the Vice Commander of the Joint Warfighting Center at U.S. Joint Forces Command in Suffolk, Virginia, training the senior leaders and their staffs for Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. I also served as the commanding general of the 200th Military Police Command, which is the senior law enforcement unit within the U.S. Army and headquartered at Fort Meade, Maryland. Its missions included training and advising foreign law enforcement. And lastly, but most notably, I was a senior military advisor to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs at the Pentagon, whose office recommends policy for initial entry training. It has been an honor and a privilege to gain and now share my knowledge and experience about our national security. In my retirement, I have joined over 800 retired admirals and generals nationwide in recognizing that the strength of our country depends on a strong military, and a strong military depends on a robust pipeline of qualified individuals willing and able to serve. We all belong to an organization called Mission Readiness. Mission Readiness has championed evidence-based bipartisan state and federal public policy solutions that are proven to prepare our youth for life and to be able to serve their nation in any way they choose. Unfortunately, nationwide, 77% of youth between the ages of 17 and 24 cannot qualify for military service, and is an increase from 2017's already troubling ineligibility rate of 71%. New data specifically for Maryland has not been released by the Department of Defense. This staggering majority of young people cannot qualify for military service because they are overweight, too poorly educated, and or have a record of crime or substance abuse. While such increases are alarming, there are solutions. Strengthening investments in the expansion of quality childcare can help sustain the current workforce, promote healthy living, build a future workforce, contribute to public safety, and enhance national security. This is all possible because, as many as you on the committee know, the first several years of a child's life are critical for brain development. This is a time when young children develop core pre-literacy, pre-math, and social skills and build the foundations for all later learning. In Maryland, 74% of children under age 6 have all available parents in the workforce. The Child Care Scholarship Program is a critical safety net for working families with lower incomes, allowing these Marylanders to access affordable, quality childcare. Childcare ranks as one of the top 4 highest household expenses in all districts in the state. The cost of childcare is the primary reason many women exit the labor force in Maryland. The CCS program provides eligible working families with financial assistance to offset the rising cost of childcare. Childcare scholarships help parents enter and remain in the workforce. I asked the Maryland General Assembly to work with the Moore-Miller administration to identify the funding necessary to ensure that the CCS program remains affordable with no additional co-payments for families. The United States military has some of the best family support systems in the world, including childcare. It is time to replicate that in the civilian world. Beyond the immediate need to improve childcare, the future competitiveness and readiness of our country are predicated on raising healthy and productive youth who can go on to serve in all facets of society, including our armed forces. I recommend with the strongest of terms for your committee today, if you care about the national security of Maryland and our country, you will secure all investments and progress to childcare in the great state of Maryland. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. Okay. Anybody else? Raise your hand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.